Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them. Hello, weirdos! This is Diogo Nogueira, and today we're gonna listen to a great chat I had with Alan Bahr. Alan Bahr is the creator of Gallant Knight Games. He's a prolific artist. He's a game designer. He does layout. He does music. He does comics, and he currently has a really great Kickstarter for comics called Ring Breaker. It's on Kickstarter right now. I'll put the links on show notes. Inspired by Norse mythology. And here on this podcast, we talked about so many things about how his upbringing as a religious person and how he explored the world. He's always seeking. He's a very curious person. He explored a lot of topics, and I think that shows up in his game and his game design, how it's always evolving, always trying new things. And Alan also talked about philosophy and how his roots impact the way he is with other people and with gaming. And I talked a little bit how that influenced me and how I see Alan as not only as a great fan, but as a mentor, and who taught me how to operate in the scene, in the RPG world, and I learned a lot from it. And we talked not too about how he not really seek the weird, but I think kind of the weird finds him because of his interests, and he's very unique, very passionate, and very personal about his interests. So I hope you listen it and enjoy it and take something out of it. I know I did. So let's get weird with Alan Bahr. Hey Alan! Oh, thank you so much for coming here to Weird Games and Weird People. So how have you been, my friend?
I am good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat and hang out.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I was so glad to see you at Gen Con. We had the opportunity to have dinner together with our friends and just
Yeah.
talk a little bit and connect a little bit more. It's had been quite a while since I've seen you, and I, we're very good friends. I don't know if people know about this, and we work it together. I see you kind of a mentor to me, like you taught me so much, and I mean, not only about game design, but how to operate in this space and how to treat people. And you really taught a really good lesson once when we were working in a project together. And of course, I was just beginning, and you were already well known, and you made a point to everybody receive the same payments and same treatment, and that really showed me the kind of person you are, and how to be in this space. And it's a very good example. So, but
Well,
many
thank you.
people who are listening is maybe don't know too much about you, or know only through your work. Can you introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about what you do, and
Sure.
if you can share just a small odd detail or weird detail about yourself, or it can be a
Yeah.
big thing or a small thing, like the way you do coffee or something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So one, I don't actually think I'll ever get a better introduction than you're the guy who, helped me learn how to treat people better and ethically. I mean, that if that's the best thing anybody ever says about me, I will consider my life well lived, I think.
Wow.
That you have no idea how much that means to me to hear. So thank you.
Wow.
Uh
Yeah,
so
and I say that to a lot of people. Like, I learned from you not only how to do games, how to present them better, and how to promote them and operate the space like professionally, but as how to treat people better and than that I've seen in other spaces that I've worked with. So, and I think people uh, deserve to know this and know
well,
a bit about yourself and see how that shows in your games too. That ethic, that ethic is that goodness also shows in your games too.
well, thank you. That you have no idea what that means to me. But anyway, before I start crying on this podcast in the first 10
Mhm.
minutes, um, I'm Alan Bahr. I'm primarily known for running Gallant Knight Games, which is an RPG and some card games company. But I do RPG development and work for a lot of other companies as a freelancer, including Osprey, Steamforged, various friends or colleagues in the industry. Sometimes I do Kickstarter consulting, etc. I wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of things. Um, Most of my games are bestsellers. I've won a bunch of awards. I'm also a comic book writer. You might know me from that. Chances are no, because I'm not very well known for that. But if you do, hey, great. Trying to think what else I do now at this point in my life. I used to do a lot more, but now it's mostly games and comics. I've been doing Gallant full time for 3 years now. So
Well, I see you doing a lot more. Like I follow you, and I know you make music. I know you make podcasts. You write comics.
all right, all
I
right, all right,
mean,
all right.
yeah,
So I do a podcast called Radio Free RPG. We're currently on season 2. I talk to people who make RPGs, and I try to talk to people who do the things you might not hear about, or that might not, fairly or unfairly elevate their name to the cover. So we talk to a lot of folks like layout artists and editors, some designers and writers and artists, obviously. But my focus is on, highlighting the people who make RPGs, including the jobs you might not know
yeah.
about.
That's great too. I want to do something like this here too. So we have some pointers. I have some artists that I work with that want to invite, of course, and I think that's a great way to show people that RPGs are collaborative, not only in how you play it, but how you make them too, right?
Yep. Yep. I also have a podcast coming out with my friend soon called Act 3, which is a action movie podcast where we watch an action movie and talk about the third act and what we think they did well or did poorly. He's a screenwriter. I am just a movie aficionado. I watch a lot of action movies. I like cooking. I cook. I'm a philosophy student, both academically as well as casually. Currently writing a paper on pre-Ionian philosophies of the Greek city-states.
Wow.
I don't know what I do. I have dogs. I love dogs. I love animals. Hockey fan, pro wrestling fan. Lots of
Nice.
stuff.
What about like the weird detail about you, like some habits or something
Yeah.
you like to do?
I don't like coffee. Actually, is
Sure.
maybe a weird detail.
Do you
To
like
the point
tea?
where
Do you like?
the smell of it will drive me out of the room.
Oh, okay. Do you
Like
like
I'm
tea
not
or no?
allergic or anything. I grew up not drinking coffee, and by the time I was old enough to, you know, be on my own and move into drinking coffee or whatever. I grew up Mormon, and Mormons don't drink coffee. And I went to a Mormon college, and they don't have coffee
Wow.
on college. There, you can't get it. You have to go off the college to get it. And so by the time I wasn't Mormon and maybe ready to drink coffee, I was, in my 20s. And I just hated the smell so much. It smelled like somebody had just burnt something all the time to me, which is what coffee is. It's just burnt bean juice, right? But
Yeah. I mean, like regular coffee, yeah, I use it to drive me nuts. I didn't like coffee until like 20 something too. I started drinking coffee to avoid work, basically. I started working in this company, and like every day about 3 o'clock, the entire floor I was in would stop to drink coffee. I wouldn't be like the only one who would stay working.
right, yeah.
So I said, of course I would drink coffee, you know?
Here in the US, when I was starting out in my career, in software, there was smoke breaks. You would see people take up smoking to go get the break because normally you would only get so many breaks a day, but if you
Yeah.
smoked, you could go out more.
Yeah. That
So
always made me think too. Yeah.
yeah. Coffee seems like a healthier version of that, maybe.
Yeah. What I did when I was playing Pokemon Go, and I was at work, and I would see a Pokemon nearby in the streets, I would say, "Oh, I'm gonna grab a smoke," and I would go out, grab a Pokemon, and get back. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if it works, it works.
Yeah. I
Got to
mean,
get
because
those
people,
Pokemon.
yeah, I don't play anymore, but I mean, people get all the time because of that, and I don't know, it's so
Yeah.
acceptable. Yeah. Uh, okay, Alan, what do you consider weird? Like, are you interested in the weird? Like, I see some of your games do a lot of that, and you always try to break the molds of genre and fantasy and even horror, and you experiment with things. And I think that's something about interest in the weird. So I'd like to ask you if you're interested in that, and what is weird for you. How would you define that, and why would you be interested or not in this?
That's a hard question to answer, right?
Yeah,
So where I grew up, I grew up in a very rural agricultural part of North Dakota. And very far removed. Like our biggest city is only 60,000 people. And our smallest city is 16. It's very much our whole state is smaller than the population. The city I grew up in is smaller than the population of where I went to college.
I see.
So for me, weird was always just something that's outside the normal. But that's so hard to define because what is normal, right? Like is normal, you know, was I weird for wearing not baggy jeans when I grew up in the 90s? I was, yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe
So
that's.
I don't know. I've always struggled with the word weird. When I think about it in gaming, I tend to assign it more towards a weird fantasy or weird fiction, which is more of that esotericism, or that supernaturally unsettling vibe. I think you get from things like Clark Ashton Smith,
From the Pope,
Chambers, some of the pulp fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, weird in game terms, in genre, in things like that, it would be that, right?
Okay.
But I think if you were to say, Alan, describe something you like as weird, I would just look for something that was unusual or different, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect definition, and I think that makes you someone that maybe is interested in that, because you said you grew up in this very rural, in a normal upbringing, and how did you get out of there? How did you pursue something outside, or do most people go outside of that, or do they stay there? Because maybe that was the outside was really interesting to you. Maybe that what drove you out, or I don't know, or maybe that's what you keep seeking. Because now this is normal, but
it's funny you say that because I left for college, and I moved about 1,000 miles away, which in the U.S. in the West is only 3 states. So I just moved 3 states away, but
yeah, but in the US, that could be a very completely like maybe
absolutely.
other country. Yeah,
I moved from the plains of the Midwest because I grew up in North Dakota, kind of, which is in the upper center of the country, very top center, and I moved out to Utah, which is out in the mountains. And I lived there for 15 years in Utah. And then my wife got a job in North Dakota, so now we're back. So accidentally, like completely unrelated to the fact that I'm from there, we just kind of ended up back in North Dakota. So I got out, but I got pulled back in 15 years later. So, you know, where I grew up, we didn't have a game store. Really, we had a model store that mostly sold model trains, and they sold some like Warhammer. But like if I wanted to buy a D&D book, I had to go to like the Barnes and Noble, like the big bookstore in town, and they would only have the core books or whatever. So, I never felt like I was trying to get out of North Dakota.
okay.
Right? Like I have always
But you never tried to get back into that maybe tranquility and normalcy, or you just adapted to a new normalcy, or
for me, where I live has never been part of what would define my normal.
Okay.
Like I've never felt like I have to live here for this to be normal or something, right? Like to a degree, because of my interests, I'm there. Like I don't know many people who want to hang out and talk about philosophy with me, right? I don't know many people who want to come over and watch pro wrestling every week with me. I have better luck with board games and RPGs. I teach myself. I love to learn weird things, and there I am using weird. Like I know how to blacksmith, like coal blacksmith. I know how to bookbind. I know how to make candles. I know how to make soaps. Like I've taught myself a lot of stuff where I've gone to classes or learned because I like learning new things.
Yeah.
But what that has always meant has been that I will never quite be the jigsaw piece that fits the puzzle wherever I am. That was true even back in middle school. I was the one reading all the books in the library who knew all the weird stuff, the unusual answers, or was, I had bad grades, but they had to ban me from practice tests because everybody in the classroom would just skip it. So I would do it all and they get it all right. Because they were always like up on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was always on the outside anyway. So where I lived was always irrelevant to that. I was always going to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable there. Like, I like being who I am. Sure. I'm very happy with myself as a person.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So I don't really feel the need to live in a particular place to feel like I belong.
Sure. And for some people, they would probably say that that's something weird about you. Like you stand out and like you are very comfortable with yourself. And for some people, that's very weird. It's kind of genetic. We have this genetic inclination to fit in, to conform, to not draw attention, and
oh, yeah. So you're saying I'm genetically deficient? Is that what you're saying?
No,
my genetics
no,
are
no, no.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
I mean, yeah, we are learning how to be more comfortable with being ourselves because we are at the safety of like a kind of functional society. We don't have like to hide from tigers every day, so you don't have to fit in all the time. So I think that's something that puts you in that category of weird. Maybe the weird is it's you, and that's good. I mean,
yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, I never thought about it that way. I just always been very, and like any human, sometimes I feel like maybe I don't belong in a certain situation or whatever, right? Like I don't always feel that way, but generally speaking, in my life, I have always felt like in my house, people in general, this is all my house is where all my stuff is. I like being in my house.
Yeah.
Right. This is where all my games are, all my books, my dogs, my wife.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's coming over, who lives down the street, I am happy in my space because I have made it my space. And that is irrelevant to anything else.
True. Yeah. I know how you feel. Like this is kind of my cave, like my studio too, and I feel very comfortable here. And I know how you feel about your space too. And I like when we go to the con, we have dinner in the hotel, and I think that's very normal. And you explore so many other things. I see you like an explorer, as you say. You explore book binding, you explore so many different crafts, and I think that's excellent for creativity. You have so much experience in so many things, and that teaches you a lot in I think the fields you focus more, like writing, game designing, and comics, right? And do you think that you learn other things from this craft? And could you like say something that you learned from any other kind of those arts that you explored that you began applying in your work as a game designer?
Oh, well, I mean,
or just influencing you
it never
influences
me. No, I'm just kidding. So I learned jazz piano years ago, and I still play jazz piano.
Wow.
And I learned jazz piano composition. And one of my games out from Osprey called Crescendo of Violence, the mechanics are literally based on jazz improvisation and composition structure.
Wow.
Like if you look at the rules and the way the rules unfold over a session, it is a direct mirror to how jazz music is created. It's sort of the contextual foundational rules.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's really a way to integrate this in the games and show how important it is for like the game designer to explore and get out of the field and not just study other games. Like I know we love games. I see you have like so many games, and like me, it seems like we can't stop getting those. But it's so important for us to delve in other fields, and they can teach you a lot about game design, even game design, you can learn, or they gave you ideas for games, and how that can influence and make your games even more unique and personal and authentic, and connect to people in ways if you would just repeat what we see in games would never happen.
Right.
What did you say is the weirdest game you ever made, or weirdest adventure, or weirdest situation in a game table you were with, or if you can remember like the weirdest, just like the most recent one that made an impact on you.
So I was running a playtest of Tomb Punk, which is one of my games, which just got a Kickstarter from Octopress Publishing, and this is second edition. And we were running a playtest with the publisher and some other people. Who Chris is a good friend. I've known him for years. And I was feeling a little out of it, and they decided I accidentally teleported them to an alien planet in a fantasy game with no aliens. Wow. I was making a decision on the fly, and I made the wrong decision. I was like, "Oh shit! This isn't part of the game. Like, this isn't a thing." Because I was just, kind of in my head doing whatever I was doing, just like, oh well, they messed up the weird thing, so I'll do a John Carter vibe, and then I was like, oh wait, I didn't write a John Carter game. What am I doing? But they were already on the alien planet, so all of a sudden, on the fly, I was having to populate it with alien monsters and stuff, and so I reached into my bag and I pulled out a monster that I had written about in a short story that never got published. 15 years ago now, probably. Called a trollywog, which is sort of like a living Muppet tumbleweed with legs and big eyes. So it's like a little fuzzy ball of noodles, and it just kind of bounces along the ground.
Okay.
And so I was describing this, and as we're playing, I'm like, they're gonna go to the trolleywogs. I'm like, how the hell do trolleywogs live? Like, what the fuck do I do with that? And I decided they lived in big cities on the side of cliffs with tubes, so they could ramp up and down like those tube slides at a kid's playground. And so all of a sudden they're in this city, and the entire thing is inhabited by living Muppet like basketball or soccer ball sized round tumbleweed people, aliens. And everything is a tube. Like, their houses are circular so they can spin around to like move around, and they have tubes that let them go places. And my poor humans are on this alien planet, like, we can't get around here. What are we supposed to do? And so that was pretty weird. I was kind of whipping this out on the fly, and now it's in the book. The publisher was like, we're adding this, you know that, right? And I was like, I guess I'm expanding this. I didn't really think about it, but here we are.
And how did they get around? What did they do?
Oh, I think I just said, oh, they have baskets with like trolleys or something that you can just like, kind of with a rope pull yourself.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, you can't see this, but I'm making the motion of like climbing a rope here.
Oh yeah. And I'm just created the email to make like the YouTube channel, so I'm putting the video out there like soon.
Wait, what? The video's going up there? I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't wear a nice shirt. I didn't comb my beard.
Well, we can
I'm
edit
teasing,
and do like a post edit, and then like we can put like the face of Tom Cruise if you prefer.
Oh well, in that case, yes, please post it everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was pretty. And so I was just trying to come up with stuff, and so I was just making these more and more outlandish sort of plants and fauna on this alien planet. And by the time I was done, like, just making it up on the fly in the game, I think I created the weirdest alien planet I have ever thought of.
Yeah,
I don't think of myself. I don't think of myself as a terribly creative setting builder. Like, for me, I've always felt like my strength is making rules. And creating interesting rules and ways to engage with the game. And I always felt like, I don't know how to write settings. I'm not good at this. I don't want to do this. I don't like it. And the last year or so, I have started to feel differently about that. I wouldn't say the opposite, because I still feel like I'm good with rules. But I've been like, oh no, I do write good settings, right? And this was sort of like kind of I'll say the climax of that year journey, where I was like, oh shit, I'm good at this, and I can do it on the fly and keep it interesting.
Oh
And
yeah,
I can make it weird. I've never felt like I was as weird as some of the people who make these like really awesome, interesting, dynamic, like indie RPGs out there. Like there is some truly weird in a good way, like just really
yeah,
creatively weird stuff. And I've
yeah.
always felt like I can't do that. Like I don't have that in me. And after this, a couple weeks ago, I was kind of like, oh, maybe I do. So I might try that.
Isn't it so good as you look back at your work and you see like the evolution of how you learned it from each project you made. You learned something, and you played other games and learned something from these other games, and you see how your work, your uh, skill as a game designer just grows. The more you make games and the more you play other games, can you see this evolution? Can you uh, like even make like some connection between what you learned from each of your games and how you arrive uh, in the stage you are today?
That's a hard question. I feel like I'm not good at these kind of questions. Nobody ever asked them of me. I'm always asking other people them, so this is a little different for me. Uh, I don't know. Like I have always loved RPGs. Like they have always been one of the big uses of my time by choice. Like if I have a choice of how I want to do something, it will be either with my family or RPGs. Like those are my top two options. Then after that, we have
Yeah.
wrestling and movies and well, any of my other hobbies. But RPGs are always going to be the top thing. Like I will always choose that first. Um, so for me, going into RPGs was it just kind of made sense to me mentally and emotionally. Like I love doing it. I love I love the creativity. I love the hobby. I love the people who make them. You know, I don't. I never really thought about. I never thought I'd make it a full time job per se, but I always kind of figured I would, at the minimum, as an avid fan of the products. But I'd always want to be adjacent to RPG. And even if I ever quit Gallant, I can't see that changing. Maybe I'll become a reviewer. Maybe I'll, do something else. Who knows? Whenever I retire from making games, but uh, I don't know. It always felt natural to me, and I never really stopped to question to myself why I chose this or what led me here. Kind of like
Okay.
I've questioned if it was the right choice. I've questioned is, man, this is really hard. Maybe I made the wrong decision, or oh, this is really
Not
hard on
even
my
about
family.
not even about start doing this professionally. Not how did you come up with, oh, I'm gonna make something and sell this? How did you come up with this confidence? Or
Um, a complete misunderstanding of how hard this industry was. Mostly, I think. So in reality, I was a hobbyist tinkerer, homebrew stuff like we all kind of do, right?
yeah,
As GMs, the more you GM, the more you get into homebrewing your own stuff, I think, for the most part.
yeah,
And I had done some submissions to stuff, nothing that ever happened really. But I had a friend who had a very successful online web comic, Schlock Mercenary, which is a science fiction comic, and he wanted it in an RPG. And he asked me, he's like, hey, I know you love this. Do you want to give me a pitch? And I gave him a pitch and he loved it. And he's like, let's make it. And it raised 350K on Kickstarter. And I basically took the money from that and said, cool, that was awesome. Not realizing how little I actually had to do just designing the rules set. I'm going to start my own company and I'm going to keep doing this on the side. And that's where it all goes downhill. Right.
oh, but that's fantastic. You saw something pursuing a passion they had, and they were able to be successful in that, and you were able to contribute to that, and you see, well, I can actually make this. People like me are doing this, so why not me, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I would have done it without Kickstarter being a thing. That
I see. Yeah.
definitely made me feel like it was doable. I had thought about it before that and I had kind of worked on it, but the idea of funding all of this straight up on my own was, I think, something that was just going to make it so hard to do that without that sort push into Kickstarter, I don't think I would have probably done it the same way.
I see. Yeah, it's hard. I mean,
Yeah,
Alan.
absolutely.
Yeah, Alan. What about RPGs? Like, do you see it as a weird thing, a weird hobby, or do you see this just like anything else? Or if you see it's something weird, do you have any particular thing about RPGs that it's your favorite, and you love how different and captivating it is for you?
RPGs to me are the only form of artistic or creative expression where the audience is also in part the author.
Yeah,
The people, when you play an RPG, the people who are creating the story are also the audience consuming the story in that sense. And to me, that is unusual, is really cool. Um, and I think it's worth a significant portion of what makes it interesting. Like, how do you make something to help somebody be an author and the audience at the same time? Because that's what we're
yeah,
doing when we make games. And that is a creative challenge unlike any other medium in my experience.
yeah,
Even in the most freeform video game, there are going to be limitations just because of what's been programmed into the game. It can be very open, it can be tons of choices, but there will always be an algorithmic limitation to what that video game can and will do based on what's been programmed, right? No matter how
yeah,
big Starfield is, how many planets there are. If an option is not programmed into the game, it is unlikely
yeah,
that it can happen in game. I don't know enough about this to assume to say
yeah.
never, but I would think never,
Yeah,
right?
and I think even games that have those editors, you can't just create on the spot. You get to that limitation in like an RPG, like you can get an adventure, a setting, and there are limitations. There are things that are not specified. But when you arrive into that, you don't have to stop and edit. You just as you play, you are creating it. It's like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's the only
something
medium
very
that does that.
fascinating.
I think that's really interesting and special.
Yeah, yeah. And then, but now we have other kind of audience too. Like with streams, you have people that are actually audience, and then you
Yeah.
know
Which
that's
again
something.
changes the way I think we think about making RPGs, right? Like I
Yeah,
haven't ever written any of my RPGs to be consumed from a spectator only standpoint. Like they
yeah.
could
That's
be.
something to think about. I had never thought about making an RPG that expects to have some people watching in on stream or something, and maybe there could be a mechanic for that, or maybe there can be
Right.
something that works with
Well,
this.
and this is the thing I often tell streamers, like, or not streamers, but when I talk about streaming with people, I'm like, as an artist, as a creative, as a person who is creating a thing here, my intent is that is experienced in one way. Now, obviously, I know once you get the game, you can do whatever you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I write my
Of
games, I
course, yeah,
generally have the intent that you are going to consume it in the form of playing it with a group of people, generally in person, but I also, consider virtual tabletops when I make those decisions. And I think if I was going to make a game for streaming, I would make some very different decisions in how I make the game
oh
than
yeah.
I would if I wasn't going to make a game for streaming.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Like how would you
Oh,
change one of your
well, I mean, the
games
type of
for
mechanic, like I
stream?
would keep the mechanics that the players playing the stream use to a minimum to make it easier to, and I would make them more improv or open ended, right?
Okay,
Like I would try to
yeah,
focus on the performance level quality.
that
Like
makes total sense. Yeah,
right, like I did a lot of theater in college and high school, both improv and things like Shakespeare and stuff, and so from being at least casually and tangentially familiar with the space, the way I would structure the rules and the way things happen in the game, I would change those inflection points for the players. But then I would also orient a series of mechanics towards the audience. Because again, to me, the audience being part of the authorship of what's happening in the game is an essential component to RPGs. And
Okay, yeah.
by cutting out that level of participation, I think you lose a little bit of what makes RPG special personally. Now, some streams
Yeah.
have got around that. They do like the charity donations or whatever, where you donate and you get
Oh
to
yeah,
force
of
a player to
course.
reroll,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that
Yeah.
is a kind of mechanic. Like, I would consider that. I think that is a mechanic that qualifies
Yeah.
for what I'm thinking about, right?
Yeah, of course. I would just be interested to see a game that has actually rules that engage with this audience on the internet in some way, and maybe how that audience can influence the game of the people are playing in some way.
Right.
That would be curious to see. I don't know if I would pursue that because I'm really more focusing on the table. I don't, like stream is not something. Uh, I'm more interested in the connection with the players, you know, and maybe the
Right.
tactical
But
aspect. But I think
there's
that's
a
really
connection with
interesting.
there's a
Yeah, yeah,
connection with the streamers and the audience too, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so if we're focused on connection and the mechanics making a connection between the people experiencing the game, well, then the audience, in the case of streaming, is part of that
yeah,
connection.
yeah,
So how do we elevate them from audience to authorship?
yeah,
Because that's what we're doing, right? That's what you do at your table. That's what you do at a VTD. That's what you do on a stream
yeah. Of
with
course, yeah.
RPGs. So what does that look like?
I would be interested to see how that doesn't become a lot of noise because you have to pay attention on the players are with you and an audience out there,
And
and
that's the
that's
design
something.
challenge, right?
Yeah, that's the design challenge that I was curious because that's something that always makes me nervous because when I'm playing on stream or something, and there's always this interest to engage with the audience too, but it's usually so much information because yeah, I sometimes play games that I like to pay more attention to what's happening there. For me it's hard to focus my attention to this that the shift it because I get distracted. But I would be interested to see how a game would try to do that and minimize this kind of distractions, or maybe it's probably would be a game designed to play on these platforms that would see like the roles and the chat in the same place, and maybe
Right,
something like this,
exactly.
right?
Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of I think there's a lot of interesting potential there. I haven't
yeah,
sat down to folks, if
yeah.
you want
That's
me to
very
explore
interesting.
this and you run a stream, come hire me to write a custom game for your stream so I can do this because
Yeah,
I don't think
please
I can
do.
justify it as myself.
Yeah,
So
please do hire Alan because I'm very interested, and I had never thought about it. I have never seen anyone talking about it, so it's very interesting to think about it.
when I
And
say I love
now, yeah,
RPGs, like this is the stuff I just think about throughout the day, no matter what I'm doing. Like my brain is
yeah,
constantly talking to me about RPGs.
yeah, yeah. Wow, that's great for us that we are here just waiting to see what your brain will ask you to make. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've learned to jettison the 90% of the ideas that are bad. So luckily you only get to see the good ideas. But
Oh, I take notes of all of them, and then I'll try to combine. Like, you can have 99 bad ideas, but you can combine 6 and 7 of them, and then combine and
yeah,
make a good one. So yeah,
yeah. If I have 100 bad ideas and 10% of every day idea is good, well then I have 10 good games.
yeah, yeah. That's my strategy too. Like, I have this giant notebook with
Throw it all at the
all
wall
this
and
one.
keep the
Yeah,
pieces that stick.
yeah.
Yeah, I get
So
that.
So, Alan, did you have any like word ritual that you do when you're like creating something or working on your art or on writing? Like, I don't know, you always make coffee or always wear this funny hat, or you have like this toy, it's our Neo, or I don't know,
Well,
like,
based on what I look like, all hats I wear are funny. But that was a bad dad joke there. Um no, I don't like I work at my desk. My office is a mess. I have my reference books on the shelves behind me. We ran out of room in the game library, so all the board games are also in my office now. That's what all this is. I haven't worked on all those board games behind me. But no, I don't really have a particular ritual. I think my dogs have more of a ritual about it than I do.
yeah.
Like they
So
come in
did
and
they always come with you? Yeah.
yeah, well, because I work from home during the day and my wife is gone at her job. So they often are laying in my office on their 2 dog beds. You can see one behind me, and then there's one over here on the
Yeah.
floor. And they have their own little rituals about how they tell me when they want stuff. But for me, I just sit down and work. Like I don't have anything fancy or special or terribly inspiring. I sit down and I do the work. That's it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had been struggle to do just that, and sometimes people say that those rituals help, and there are a lot of people that do have them. So I started one of my own, and I asked some people, and some people have them. I'm always curious to see if other
Yeah.
creators have something similar.
No, I just sit down and do the work. I don't have particular music. I'll listen to anything. You can have words or whatever when I write.
But you
Or I'll
do
throw on a
listen to music,
movie.
yeah?
Yeah, but I'll throw on a movie. I'll throw on
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I throw on like a sport. Like I love watching hockey, so I'll throw hockey on the other monitor, or wrestling, or sometimes nothing because I don't care. It just it really I just
It doesn't get you out of the zone or anything. It just becomes background
no,
noise, or you just
yeah.
focus from one to another, or
Yeah, well, I focus on this, and like one of the reasons sports or wrestling is great, if the announcer says something that like catches my interest, I can stop and look over and then rewind it because I don't usually watch them live here. So
oh, okay.
then I can just catch the thing. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that is cool. And then I go back to what I'm doing.
Well, but that's a habit. That's like a routine. That's something you do, and it's different for
Yeah,
other creators. Some people have to create in complete silence. Others
yeah,
don't.
yeah. But to me, a habit and a ritual are different. And
Yeah, of course.
that
Yeah.
is probably, at least in part due to my religion,
Yeah.
where ritual carries a very specific context.
Oh yeah. Yeah, of course, yeah.
But yeah, I have habits. Everybody has habits when they work. I guess for me, the biggest thing that would be like a work habit is I cannot write in any word processing software other than Microsoft Word.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I obviously I can, but my
Yeah, but
productivity drops by like 2/3.
I see.
Like if you
What
were
do you
like,
like
hey, I wrote
about
this.
it?
If you email me and you're like, hey, Alan, I wrote this in Google. Will you give it an edit pass? Well, I can do that just fine, right?
Yeah.
But like if you're like, hey, Alan, we work in Google Documents and I need you to deliver your submission in Google Documents, it'll probably take me 3 times as long to get it done.
Can't you just like writing in Word and just copy paste on Google Docs?
Usually that works. It doesn't work for things like tables or specific formatting options.
I see. Yeah, tables.
And one of the reasons
Google Doc tables are weird.
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons I work in Word is if you use Affinity Publisher for layout, you can copy and paste your tables from Word into Affinity as tables.
Yeah. That's true.
Which makes doing tables a lot easier.
Yeah.
When I write that D100 table, I don't have to manually add everything. I can literally copy the whole table and put it into Affinity as a big table.
Yeah. I've learned how to do like an Alt tab, Alt Command tab, Command C, Alt Command tab, Command V. I've learned how to do that fast, and that just works for me. But I've learned it from Google Docs. So like if you copy the tables vertically, you can copy paste them vertically. You can copy paste everything, but you can copy paste some sections. Yeah. And I've figured something out. But yeah, there's even times that I like just copy the table from Google Docs, paste on Word, and copy from Word to Affinity,
Yeah, I've tried that. It doesn't ever work quite as well though as it coming from Word directly, because going from Google Docs to Word will mess it up a little bit, and then it just gets messed up worse.
Yeah, mine did work for at least the times I tried. So yeah. But I see your point. Yeah. The only problem I had with Word, I used to choose Word, but on the mobile it was getting like heavier than Google Docs, So I shifted to Google Docs.
I keep in my backpack or my car, I have a little fold out Bluetooth keyboard that folds out. It's like maybe this big, like and so I keep it around because if I'm stuck somewhere or something, I can bust it out and do some writing on my phone. So
yeah, I don't know. For me, it was kind of slow, and for a while there, like OneDrive had like compatibility with Mac, and I just switched to something else because I was afraid to lose the files. But yeah. Hello, weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and I'm back with a word from our sponsors. Me. I just released a new game called Cosmosaurus, in which you play a dinosaur space ranger who protects the galaxy from evil threats such as slime bankers, undead pirates, and cosmosaurs from a void dimension. It's a game with a runes-light system inspired by Forged in the Dark and Lasers and Feelings. It comes with a bunch of tables for you to generate content for it. If you know my games, they're really easy to play and they have tools to help you improvise and play with low prep. It's an ideal game for one-shots, short campaigns, and introducing new people to the hobby, and it's a really perfect family game. I play with my kids all the time. It's a game inspired by Saturday morning cartoons. It's really well illustrated by Lucas Kowalski from Poland, and with a great layout by Guilherme Gontijo. It's a really fun game. You should check it out on Drive-Thru RPG, itch.io, or exclusively in print on exaltedfurniture.com. I have many other games there, check them out. All the links are in the show notes, so click there. And let's get back to Weird with our chat. Alan, talking about weird again, what would be the weirdest game you ever played or you read besides like the session, like a game you were interested in, like a setting or some kind of weird rules that caught your interest?
I don't.
No,
That's a
you
hard
play a
one
lot
to
of games,
answer.
right?
I do, and we have 5 weekly games for RPGs. We play 5 weekly RPGs.
Or even something you
and-
read that you made you think a lot about how this like changed the way you saw some kind of trope, or I don't know.
Man, I don't know. You should have told me that one was coming so I could have prepared. I can't think of a good answer off the top of my head.
Cool. That's
Yeah, I got
that's
nothing
fine.
for that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't.
That's fine. Yeah.
I find every RPG to be inspiring in some form or another. So
Yeah, that's a nice way to see that.
sometimes it's inspiring and going, don't make something like this, but it's inspiring.
Yeah, that's a great way to see things, and
You
I
know?
think that's another thing that you teach about. There's a lot of designers that just talk bad about some of the games and why those other games are bad. You are able to see like even like bad games having a good lesson for you to learn, and that's something very positive.
I generally find that if somebody is willing to invest in their art, there is always something good in that art somewhere. You just have to be willing to look for
it. Yeah, absolutely. Alan, I would like to talk a little bit about something more personal and experiences, and I asked you if you could talk about this, and you said like you have a Mormon upbringing, and now your spirituality and your religion has shifted to something different. Could you talk a little bit about your journey through that, and where you are at now, and how your faith affects your life, and as you talked about how rituals have a meaning in your faith?
Sure. So, I mean, this should tell you how much esteem I hold you in, Diogo, because I don't think I've ever publicly discussed this. Religiously, I grew up Mormon until I was about 18, 19, after which I left the Mormon church. For a variety of reasons. It's just, in the end, it wasn't a good fit for me on what I considered to be important to me spiritually. And I sort of bounced around looking for various things. Like I said, as a student of philosophy, I already have some pretty core ideas of what morality and ethics mean to me as a person. And those have been pretty constant throughout my life. And eventually I landed in what is best described as a Norse Reconstructionist heathenry form of worship. So I am a Norse Reconstructionist heathen, which means I attempt to practice the same way my ancestors did, and can recontextualize that in a modern environment. And to be clear, that's not to say you have to have ancestors from a Norse or Scandinavian culture. I just happen to. I don't truck with that white supremacist bullshit that uh a lot of those assholes like to throw around in that space. And a lot of the people I know in that space don't either. Is a very actively anti-Nazi, anti-white supremacist space. So for me, contextually, I do have those ancestors, but I wouldn't consider that essential to that. I just want to disclaim that right up front before somebody,
Sure.
assumes
Yeah.
the worst. That's not the
Of
case
course.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck Nazis. Just flat out say it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Fuck Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I have been for probably close to 8 years now a Norse reconstructionist heathen, which involves a lot of sort of academic style reading of texts and archaeology papers and anthropology papers, trying to recontextualize and reinterpret the Norse heathenry system of worship into a modern context. So, we don't sacrifice animals or do things like that, but we do have those rituals and elements about them still, in terms of certain feast days, things like that.
I see.
So that's sort of the journey in a kind of a summationary arc, I guess.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about some of the teachings of these religions or something that you learned from it, and how did they affect your life in some way?
Yeah. So one of the big draws for me on a moral and ethical level was the concept, and I think you and I have talked about this before offline, but of frith. I think you and I have had that conversation, which is the concept of it's a little hard to describe without a pretty deep conversation, but contextually it is the concept of having a bond of obligation and trust with those in your immediate orbit, and that bond of trust and obligation extends both ways. And think of it sort of as like a moral and ethical communal line of credit, right? If you and I have frith, you have the right to ask me for help, and I have the obligation to help you because that is good for both of us, right?
Yeah.
Helping you strengthens my community, and strengthening my community is sort of the overarching goal of frith. It's sort of this like web of lines of credit communally between all of us. Now there are different levels of frith. Like the frith I have to my wife will pretty much supersede any other frith, right?
Yeah.
And frith is sort of a no ask back thing. Like if you ask for help, I don't ask for money. I just, you need help. Okay. Right. We do that.
Of
course. That's what we do here. But it can be exhausted. You can go too far. Right. Or you can do something that would violate the communal frith so much that you would need to leave the community because you've harmed it irreparably or something. Right.
Yeah, you have to know how much you can ask too, and how much you're taking, and how much you're offering.
But
too.
It is encouraged that you ask, because that asking also strengthens the community. Right.
Yeah.
Because as we help each other,
we're stronger together, right?
And in a modern context, by helping somebody, you learn to empathize and grow closer to them, and that is good for the community, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that is one of the biggest parts of this concept, is remembering that I have an obligation to the people around me, and that I need to conduct all of my actions every day in a way that elevates and builds upon that frith rather than detracts from it.
Yeah.
And then there's other things that go into it. For me, that's one of the biggest parts. So, you talked at the start here about how I try to treat people in the industry, and I have a level of obligation and frith I owe to the RPG industry. And, I see my actions there as part of that. It's a conscious decision, but I'd like to think it's one I'd make either way. But, in terms of my spiritual side, I definitely feel like there's that. It's how I make my living, and that alone obligates me a certain level of frith. But then, I have frith. I don't want to claim I'm like a leader in the industry, but I am in a position that some people aren't, and that is my full-time job, and my company is healthy, and I can support myself, and I can afford to put time and effort and mentorship and sort of leadership and things like that back into the community, and I need to, because that is an obligation.
Yeah. And that's good for you too, because healthier community, and it makes, yeah, it's
And when the community is stronger, we are all better.
yeah. And I've read, I am very also interested in philosophy too, and I'm gonna ask you a little bit about this. But I was reading a book about ikigai. It's like this philosophy, and it has to do a lot of with longevity too, like in communities that have this kind of bond that you're saying, like that people are integrated and people help each other, and people are not isolated, and people are more communal. The quality of life is always higher. People live longer. People have
Yep.
better mental health, better physical health too. Like I think this is very important for everyone. Uh, I think a kind of modern life tries to force us to be always more isolated, like always thinking of ourselves all the time, and always what is mine, what is yours, and we always like separated by things. And these philosophies, I think, are very healthy uh, to get us back being humans, and recognizing the humanity in each other, and not thinking about only the individual anymore, like how we are what the other are like. I see myself in the others, and the others they see themselves in ourselves, and I don't know.
Absolutely, we are all
Yeah,
there is more that makes us similar than makes us different, right?
yeah,
And for myself, every interaction I try to keep that at the forefront as much as I
yeah.
can, or is reasonable considering the situation.
Well, thank you very much for sharing this. I know that could be very personal, and I'm very grateful for you being comfortable for doing this with me, and
Of course.
uh,
No, of
yeah.
course.
But talk about more things about there, like about the metaphysical and supernatural. And have you ever had any kind of metaphysical experiences, like out of body experiences, or like deep meditation, hypnosis, or even like experience with psychedelics that altered your sense of reality and perception?
Um, well, so I'm neurodivergent. I have a mental health illness that requires me to be on medication. So I guess off my meds, yeah, I have stuff that alters my perception because my brain does that for me. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
but
everybody
I
drinks
actually,
coffee, and coffee is that too, right? Coffee
yeah, I
alters.
actually, aside from like caffeine, I don't take drugs. I don't drink alcohol anymore, really. Um,
Yeah.
that's not a, I don't, I mean,
Yeah, that's
spiritually, I
why I asked
believe
it,
in,
like hypnosis
yeah,
or
no,
meditation or this other.
I believe in spirits and higher powers and things like that. But I don't know if I necessarily believe in ghosts or things like that in the same way, right?
Uh,
Um,
do you think there's a way to
I'm a
interact
bit of
with
a
these spirits?
rationalist there.
Okay.
And even if those things do exist, they, unless they are something that impacts my ability to make life better for myself and those around me, they're not relevant to my day to day, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Do
um,
do you think there's a way to interact with them, or they're like in another plane, and then you can't? There's no way
I've never,
to.
I honestly have never considered it in that sense. Even if there was, I would come back to, does interacting with them help me make myself or my community better and stronger and healthier? And if the answer is not yes, then I have other things I can spend my time on.
But what if they can interact with you, and what are their interests, or
Well, if
or
they
are
can
they
interact with
all?
me, that would explain some of my bad luck, and I have a few bones to pick with the spirit world. Uh no, so I do believe in spirits. Religiously I have some rituals and things like that we do with that. So I do believe in that. Um
Okay.
I personally don't believe I've ever had a sort of metaphysical interaction with something like a ghost, or and like even when I meditate, I don't feel like I'm transcending or reaching a higher plane or anything. I've
Okay.
never I've never had an out of body experience that way. I find the concepts fascinating. I've read a lot about them. But
Yeah.
they are, if they are something that is out there, it has always eluded me. Not that I've ever tried hard to find them, but I've never happened upon it accidentally.
I see.
So
Do you have dreams? Do you like dream a lot
Oh yeah.
and use that to inspire some of your work or some of your other art or music?
No. I don't put any of my dreams in my work. That'd be bad. I have weird dreams,
Okay.
man. Very surreal stuff. Like so I again because of my neurodivergence and some of the medication I'm on, I have some pretty active dreams. And they're pretty out there sometimes. So they don't really show up much. Although in my Tiny Cthulhu book, a few of the descriptions of various non-Earth realms do draw some influence from some of the sort of liminal spaces I've dreamt about. Yeah, that's probably the only thing on my list. I am in that metaphysical sense. I am more interested in maybe the larger concepts of reality that you would define by the Gnostic paradigm.
Yeah.
Is this reality? Yeah. So is
Oh,
this reality a firm reality, or is it a reflection of something that we're trapped in or keeping us here? Have you read the RPG Cult with a
yeah.
K?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah. I
concept
read the
of
fourth edition. Yeah,
yeah,
the
perfect.
newest
Okay,
one.
so I'm actually running that right now. But anyway, that concept of there is a higher power keeping us bound in this reality to suppress our power is sort of a Gnostic approach to metaphysical reality, right?
Okay.
And I say sort of
Yeah.
in that it is explicitly a Gnostic approach. If you were to look up Gnosticism, you
Yeah.
would find that. Um,
Wow.
so for me, both as a student of philosophy, Socrates, Aristotle had a lot of opinions about metaphysicality, and the idea that we are all reflections of a higher, perfect version of something. That the reason you and I are both people, and we are the same but different is because we are imperfect reflections of a higher perfect person, right? That is posited by the Greeks very much back in the Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. I'm not sure Socrates ever posited that, but definitely Aristotle and Plato were having conversations about this, right? And that's
Yeah.
how things can be true. This is for those of you listening who don't know that, I'm holding up a monster can. This is a monster can. This is also a monster can. They are the exact same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
they're both empty. They both been opened. They're the same thing. But how can two of the exact same thing exist in two different places? Well, that's because they are a reflection of a perfectly formed monster can in metaphysicality, right?
Okay.
That's how
Yeah.
there is this thing that is the same but different in a way that doesn't make any sense. And so for me, a lot of my and that's a very loose object lesson. There's a lot more nuance to the conversation, obviously, but for me, a lot of my metaphysicality and not spirituality, but metaphysicality, which I would define as different than spirituality, revolves around that particular concept of not like I don't think reality is a lie or we're all in the matrix or anything crazy, but sort of like what defines our reality, right? And by understanding what defines it, we can improve it. And so a lot of my I guess a lot of me, both spiritually and in any way, is driven towards improvement, both improvement of the self, improvement of the community, improvement of the world around me. I can't change the whole world. I can't fix all these problems, but what I can do is have an impact on my day to day on the things around me, right? And to do that,
Yeah.
though, I need to understand as much as I can about the things around me. And so all of my spirituality, all of my philosophical studies, all of this stuff is bent towards a practical application of those concepts to make the world a better place in my immediate vicinity.
Great.
I guess is how
So,
I would long-winded way to sum that up. Like meditation might be real, transcendence might be real, and if they are, I think that's great, and I would love to, experience that one day. But I haven't yet, and even if I did, I would want to know how I can turn that into a practical application, right?
yeah, I mean, I think that helps you be more grounded in some ways because those states help you connect with yourself. I believe that at least, and
Right, absolutely.
I think that helps you get better and help others, and you feel more connected to other people. I have had experience with psychedelics that made me see others and sympathy with people that otherwise I would had bad feelings with them, and I think that have helped me with anxiety and other stuff, and sometimes that's connected with meditation, and I don't know,
Yeah,
just
and
something that
we all have different ways we get there. For
everybody
me,
has everybody has different experience, and things help work for some people and not others. And but that philosophy that you have of getting better and stuff really made me feel of excitation for a game design book, like how to have fun. Is that we have like so many games out there about destroying things that it could be very interesting to see more games out there about building and making things stronger. And that's something you really made me think about that, and something that I try to incorporate in my games too, and games that try to encourage the players to make the place, better in some way. I don't know.
Absolutely. I've got a game coming out called Salt Wolves of the Whale Road, which is a Viking Age pseudo-historical. It kind of minimizes the mythology. There's still all the monsters and stuff, but is focused on how what you do impacts your community on a day-to-day basis. Like the big mechanics are about helping your community grow and be better and safer or whatever, right? And so it's definitely focused on, you can go raid and pillage and do all the sort of Viking stuff, fight a giant, wrestle a wolf, whatever. But in the end of the day, if you don't understand how that's in service to your community, it doesn't do you any good. Right? And so the game's not out yet. I've been working on it for a very long time. But definitely it has that element of what is sort of the application of Frith to this concept of gaming.
Oh, very nice. How incorporate this teachings in your philosophy in your games, and that's very cool. And people sometimes have a hard time to see like games arts. Sometimes they teach something. They're like models of reality that allow people to experiment and play with it and gather conclusions and learn something. So I think it's very noble to put that in your games and spread a good message of positivity that can help you grow them and grow the people around them. Alan, getting back a little bit about the paranormal, the metaphysical, and the strange, do you believe anything else like aliens or I don't know, parallel dimensions or any kind of conspiracy? I know you said you don't believe in ghosts, but like anything else? Or
I'm not smart enough to have a lot of opinions on that stuff, so I don't. I've learned a long time ago. I've learned a long time ago that I've learned a long time ago that if I don't feel educated enough to express an opinion, I don't. So.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
I don't know enough about. I don't know enough about that kind of stuff to have a good opinion that I could have a discussion about, other than this is what I think. So I don't do that.
Oh, okay. But have you ever seen like an UFO or something strange in the sky? Or
well, where I live, we get to see the Northern Lights pretty regularly, so I guess that counts, right?
Yeah, but that's explainable. And that's that kind of know what it is, and but it's kind of beautiful. Yeah. How was this? Did you watch it every time, or was something unusual for you, or?
It doesn't. So I am still south enough that doesn't happen with regularity, but it happens enough that you can probably see it a handful of times a year, and I've seen it multiple times.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never seen that. That's probably something very beautiful, and
that would. I mean, it would make sense that you haven't, because you don't live in the north. You live in the south. So.
Well, but I mean, I can travel. I've traveled. I've seen snow.
If you ever want to come up here. If you ever want to come up here in the winter when it's -40 and we have 6 feet of snow, you are welcome to come up here so you can see the Northern Lights. I imagine you will hate it.
I hate the warm. Like it's too warm here, but yeah, I don't know. Well, I've just seen snow like twice, and I loved it, but I don't know.
It gets so cold here that they will not let you go outside.
Oh yeah,
because you will within seconds you will get frostbite.
Wow. That's excellent for working on your art, though. I mean, you're stuck inside. You have to work, and like
that's
a passage I love for like still like an artist. Then I said, oh, I used to live in some place that was too cold, so I would do all my work in the winter, and now I live in Texas, so it's too hot, and I do all my work in the summer because it doesn't go outside either.
Yeah, it definitely there's a reason a lot of my RPGs have very frozen wastelands in them, and it's because I live in one and have for a long time.
Yeah. Well, that's. Did you do a lot of trekking? Did you walk in the woods, or do you go out? Did you use to go out in the snow, or did
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I don't anymore because I have an old knee injury with a bunch of pins in my knee that make that kind of physical activity on a long term hard. Those of you who might have met me at Gen Con might have seen me with my cane at various stages. I don't need it all the time, but any sort of hiking or something, I would definitely need it. When I was younger, though, I did a lot of survivalist backpacking. I would go up in the mountains, pack in what you have and pack out everything
Wow.
for a week at a time. I've done like 50 or 60-mile canoe treks, solo
Wow.
kayaking excursions, things like that.
That's very nice, and that's certainly something that you can bring in your writing, and how you experiencing this world help you create these games. I think, as you said, that you live all this cold climate, and your games always have this
Yeah.
background, right?
But when
Cool.
I was a kid, we did Boy Scouts because the Mormon Church always did Boy Scouts at the time, and they have a thing called the Below Zero Hero badge, which you get by camping for 2 nights below zero.
Wow. Did you got that?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it
Wow.
was very
That must
cold.
be tough. Yeah. Wow. I can imagine. Alan, you mentioned about being neurodivergent. Neurodivergent. Sorry if I don't speak
Yep,
right.
yep.
I've I am doing the exams myself to find out if I have something, or if I
Hmm.
like my son do, and like the examiner is pretty sure I do, but I'm making all these tests and stuff, and it's still gonna take about a month and a half to finish. But are you comfortable talking a bit about this, and how this affect your life, and how you do your work, and then, or you prefer just move something else?
Sure, sure. I am going to preface it with a little bit of a disclaimer. Um, I don't believe in what I will call the unhealthy myth of sort of the artistic creative needing to be
Yeah, no,
unfettered to be creative. Like, if you
no, no.
have depression or something like that, right? Go see a therapist, be on medication.
Please
You
do.
know, the idea that I'm not myself when I'm unmedicated, I think that's harmful. I think it's bad.
Yeah,
I your brain is unregulated. There is something causing hormones to be, hormones or chemicals to be wrong in your brain, right? That's literally what neurodivergent is. It's not operating according to sort of the healthy parameters the brain is supposed to operate on. So you aren't
right.
yourself anyway when you're unmedicated because you're this uh misaligned reflection of yourself. So one, therapy and medication. The idea of the artist needing to be unmedicated to be creative, I think, is harmful and wrong.
Yeah,
So
dangerous.
I want to say that first because I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah.
So I am bipolar. I am type 2 bipolar, which is rapid cycling, which means my mania and depression oscillate on a quicker basis than others, though my mania is probably not as high as some other folks' mania because of type 2 rapid cycling. I think I got the terminology right. It's been a while, and since I refresh it, and there's always new studies coming out, and they're always tweaking it.
Yeah,
But I think
they
I got it
changed
right.
it.
Um, so I'm on type 2 bipolar, or I am type 2. I'm on medication for it. It does definitely. It has. I have had to unlearn some bad habits, and I've had to learn some new habits to help me be productive, especially working by myself at home all day. That's one reason
Yeah,
I have 2 dogs. Is just having something in the house is helpful for me. Um,
sure.
so that's kind of what I have learned and uh worked from there, I guess. uh
Okay.
I I mean, I've been diagnosed for almost 20 years at this point. So for me, I've known I am neurodivergent longer, over half my life now, right? Longer than I haven't.
Yeah.
No. So at this point, I don't want to say I've got a rhythm for it, but I've been aware of it enough that I've been able to understand the patterns and the triggers
Yeah.
and the symptoms and the impacts and the feelings and all these things that go into it. And I am able
The ebbs and
to,
flows of it, right?
right. And with therapy and practice and clear communication and medication, I'm able to ride those waves in a healthy and beneficial manner. I feel like that
Yeah.
metaphor is imperfect and it sounds like I'm letting my bipolar run my life, which I'm
No,
not. But
no,
that makes sense.
that's very well how it is. I have many friends that do this. My son has ASD, and he for a while he was having really hard trouble adapt and was kind of trying to harm himself or others. So we had to enter with medication. He's getting really way better. He's still very much himself. There's no way of this. He's very creative, he's very imaginative, very playful, very funny, and but he doesn't try to harm himself. He doesn't lose control when he you know, and I know myself. I have anxiety disorder, and I take meditation for it, and it
Right.
really helps me stay here. You know, sometimes I would get all area all in my mind, and I wasn't even feeling my body, and now I if I'm starting getting that, I can just calm down and practice just feeling and getting back to myself and back to present. And I know medication really helped with that. I know, as you said, and there's all techniques and you do everything, but I think medication really helps because, as you said, it's not something that I can just think about and just works. It's something that we need a little help, and people are afraid because they have all this prejudice about uh, mental health, you know. But it's just like you take medicine. People take medicine for they have a headache and they take tons and tons of
Right.
pills. And why this other medicine is any different, you know? Like
Mental health
people
is
go,
just like
oh,
physical health.
yeah,
Even if
and
you don't
all the
have
side
a
effects.
exactly. Even if you
Yeah,
don't have a diagnosed disorder, I'm a big fan of go to therapy once a year and check in, just like you would for a physical. Your brain needs a tune up just
yeah,
like your body does. Even if you don't
yeah,
think you need it, it will never hurt you to do it.
yeah. And people think about the side effects. Have you read about the side effects of ibuprofen? That's like they can do a lot of stuff. Like all this kind of small medicine that people take daily, the side effects can be terribly terrible. You know, like they can be horrible, and they take it like they're like TikToks or Tic Tacs or anything. And when they see this other medication that can help with something for the people, they said, "Oh, you have to really think well about this." And the way
Yeah,
society treats some kind of drugs, but those are like different kinds of drugs, and the others is really weird. You know, Alan. Talk about something else now. Get a little bit about the funny side, the weird and the fantastical. Uh, if you could have any superpower or any like fantastical ability, what would it be? What would it be, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
I know it's really boring, but I would have the power of flight. Like I would love that. I think that sounds so cool, and I would just go flying around. I think it sounds interesting. I think it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I've always dreamed about this too. Like just just
Yeah,
walking, just feeling the wind on you and getting off, and you know,
yeah,
yeah, that sounds
yeah.
great.
I think for me, flight would
Where
be
would
the
be
one,
the
and
first place you would go?
oh
What would
man,
be the first place you would go?
to visit you.
You
How's
know?
that? Well, I'll fly to Brazil and visit you because it'll be far cheaper if I do
Okay.
it than in a plane.
Okay.
Honestly, I would
I'm
probably do something like that. I would fly around the world to visit friends I don't get to see very much.
yeah, it's very true. Yeah. I could go to Gen Con every year because flight tickets wouldn't cost anything.
Right? Exactly. It'd be super affordable.
Yeah. And the last question would be if you could get any of those weird and fantastical things that we are fascinated about, and that thing could be real, what would that be?
Oh man. Repeat that question again to make sure I'm processing it correctly.
About anything fantastical and weird that we read about in mythology and folklore or legends or even games, if you could choose any of them to be real, what would it be? What would it be?
Oh man. So many of the games I play, like any other things being real would just be terrible. So like, I don't want dragons. I don't want, hordes of marauding, attackers.
But you could like a cloak of invisibility, or I don't know. You could
Sure.
like.
I think I would want, honestly, like I would want to be able to do something like Star Trek, like explore the stars from planet to planet, right? Like I think that would be fascinating, and I would be all over that. So something akin to like sort of that exploration based sci-fi like Star Trek.
Awesome, yeah, that's a great choice, and the way how the society of Star Trek and the exploration, the focus on trying peaceful solutions, great choice. So Alan, as we're getting at the end of the episode, are you working on any new game you want to talk about or promote and say to people to check out? I know you're always making something new and every release after another, but I mean, do anything you want to people check out this? I'm just releasing it and it's interesting and weird because of this or that.
I don't know how long until this podcast comes out.
2 weeks.
Okay, so my current Kickstarter will be done by then. So, I've got a game called Faith and Fear coming out from Osprey in December. It's a sequel to my Templar game, conspiracy game, Heirs to Heresy.
Oh.
Check both of those out if you want to see something really cool. I think they're a lot of fun.
Do you require the previous one to get?
Yeah, it's a full expansion. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you would need both. Which, hey, buy both. I'm fine with it. I promise. Yeah. Other than that, I think if you want something weird, my RPG, Shadows of a Dying Sun, which is a Dying Earth genre game, has a lot of that weird fantasy, Book of the New Sun, Jack Vance style storytelling in it.
Awesome. And where can people get that? Drive-thru RPG?
That's on Drive-thru and on shop.gallantnightgames.com. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So Alan, thank you very much for being here. I hope you had fun. I had some great conversation and learned a lot about you, and I'm really thank you for sharing those details. And I had some really good ideas. That bit we talked about the RPGs for stream and how the games could incorporate that. It's very inspiring, and I never had thought of it. So thank you very much for this.
Thanks for having me, Diogo. It was a ton of fun, and as always, it's great to catch up with you. We don't get to do it enough.
Yeah, we should do that more often.
We always say that too. We should really actually follow through one day.
Yeah, we have to schedule a game, but we will get to that. I promise. I'm getting back to the rhythm now, and I'm able to do more things. So
good.
Thank you again, and everybody at home. Thank you for listening, and keep it weird. Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.